everybody, welcome back to Look Back, where I take a look at games that I reviewed 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Now today is an extra long, super chock-packed full look back because I didn't do one last week, so we have 2 weeks worth of last year, 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So let's get started. First of all, last year. Black Sheep, White Sheep is a two-player game where you're trying to move sheep across the board and jump over them. Think kind of like one of those puzzle games that you might find at Cracker Barrel, but the rules were a mess and the game itself was just merely okay. Monsters Tower was a game in which you were poking your fingers through windows trying to knock pieces down to the bottom. For some inexplicable reason, I found that my rating on Board Game Geek was a 6 of this. I don't know if that was a mistake or I was crazy that day, but this game is just not that good. It's too frantic. You're pushing pieces. Your fingers are getting caught in the windows. Even my kids didn't enjoy it. Yeah, not a very good game. Monsters Tower. Undercity. This is a game which was the next dungeon crawl, big, lots of miniatures, all sorts of cool things about it. But it just was like 15 years late with mechanisms. It had a very boring look to it. The miniatures themselves were okay, and there was a few cool concepts, but I don't see anybody playing this these days, so I'm assuming that it just bombed. It was not that great of a game. Dice Brewing is a game in which you are using dice to make beer and move them from one spot to another, and it sounds really cool, but the game was just clunky. It was like, okay, I can do this now, I can move these here, but there was no smoothness to how everything moved, and there were times where you would sit there and go, there's not a lot I can do. It could have used a nice overhaul, Dice Brewing. Tricarion. Now, this is a game that I took some grief over because in my initial review, I played a fairly major rule wrong. Incidentally enough, I replayed it with the correct rule and still did not enjoy the game. But it's close, right? But I just thought the game was boring. However, obviously, I'm in the minority on this one. There are a lot of people who really enjoy this heavy Euro game. I will give it points for a really cool theme. I just found it a little boring, and I like the idea of being an illusionist magician. Just, it's for other folks. Chef Alfredo. This is a game in which you're putting things in pots and trying to remember the things that you put into pots. It is a fun kids game of memory with some nice components. Epic. This is a game that I liked. I didn't love, but I liked it. It's as if you were playing Magic the Gathering with all the most powerful cards. And that's pretty much how it plays. You're doing this. Oh, I have this huge, massive dragon. I just killed your dragon. Now I got this thing that's going to pull you up. Well, I'll hit you first. And that's what it feels like, so a lot of people are really going to enjoy that aspect of it. It's as if you were a munchkin, but so is the other player. Super Sandman, this is a game that uses that kind of kinetic sand, and you're building different shapes and trying to move across a thing, but you're also smashing people in front of you. It's for kids, but my kids, especially Holly, really liked it because they like playing with sand. Although because there's sand in the game, it is no longer in my collection. Race to the North Pole. This is a pretty interesting game. In fact, the guys who made this are now working on using apps to teach board games. But anyhow, this game here, Race to the North Pole, you're basically going to the North Pole in the middle, but the board itself is shifting thanks to storms and things, which is a cool concept. It's very, very light, but I think a lot of people would like that. Kero. This is an abstract strategy game in which you are placing blocks on a board and then trying to score. It's almost... it has some similarities to other tile-laying games, but it's very stark. It's just get points, try not to set up the next person with some really beautiful components. Fruit Mix. This is a memory-style game that really works well with kids, where they say it's anti-memory, where you're trying to not find something with something else, but that's still memory. It just seems like I'm trying to find one that's not round. Well, you still have to memorize where the different things are. Jacqueline High was a game that I played in which there's things in the middle and you're throwing dice and trying to get the right combos to be the highest person. I don't like the name of this game, but the game dice play was fine, although I think that in the long run, amongst other dice games, even those from Zoc themselves, it would be forgettable. Best Treehouse ever. This one gets extra half a point because I love the theme. I love this building this amazing treehouse with these awesome cool rooms. But the game itself is fun as you try to form the tree and you have certain rules. My kids enjoyed it again because of the strong theme. It's not the only treehouse game out there actually, but it is a good one. Floating Market, this is a game in which there are dice that are going to be placed around, and you are moving around trying to collect different fruits and going to different spots. It's a worker placement game, but it looks really cool, has a nice theme, and I just enjoyed the different options as you were trying to basically guess where the right things are going to be when you put your workers out. Ghost Splits. There's a first version and a second version. They're essentially the same, and that's where you're going to be turning over a card and trying to figure out which thing is the right color on that card. And that's not always, because there will be all these there's different shapes, but they're all the shapes and different colors on the cards. Only one is correct, and you have to grab that one. It's great teaching kids to look and to think. Flashlight and Fireflies is another children's game. This one is, essentially at night you're going around trying to find someone. It's like hide and seek in the dark, and kids will enjoy that as they try to hide their tiles in front of themselves. 10 to Kill. This is in one of those games where you have a bunch of people in a room and they're all shooting each other and you're trying to figure out who is who. It's a cool concept. I think it could have been even better, maybe with some more development, but as it is, it works. The animals are a little creepy, but I do like the idea of this person just got shot. Who shot them? There's 4 people who that's possible to be, and you're trying to figure out who each other player is. Spookies. This is a game from Haba. Haba made several of, they always make kids games, but this is one of their first family games. They made 3 family games, and this one's about pushing your luck as you go higher and higher into the castle and not let the ghosts get you. I love push your luck games. This one was a lot of fun and works for kids and adults. German Railroads was an expansion to Russian Railroads. This expansion I thought was better than the original game. It essentially replaced the tracks, and now had some sort of, basically each person had a different track than everyone else. They were trying to go for different things. And that I thought made the game a little bit more intriguing, although it is still a very heavy, very interesting style game. Warhammer Quest. This one makes me sad. My rating for this game was an 8, but actually went up to like an 8.5 and then dropped down to an 8. Why did it drop down? Because Fantasy Flight and Warhammer, and Games Workshop have parted ways, so we're not going to see any more expansions for it. This game is a phenomenally cool cooperative game. They introduced a couple small packs of heroes for it, but I wanted to see more and more missions. There isn't, so it's a cool game, but it would have been even better had we seen it been supported. World of Yoho. Oh, I love this game. This game is amazing. Your phone turns into a ship. You put them on the board. You're moving around, discovering things, shooting at other players and their ships. Really neat game. Highly recommend it. It's so unique and fun and fresh. World of Yoho. And then Adventureland. This one just keeps getting better for me. This is another one in Haba's family games from Wolfgang Kramer. I love the grid board as things are slowly popping up on it all over the place. And you are moving your pieces around, but they can never go back. So you can move them down as far as you want or to the left as you want and grab different things and fight monsters. It's such a neat concept. And there's 3 scenarios and each one plays very differently. And there's more scenarios coming. I'm excited about that. Adventureland, just a great game. So now let's take a look at games that came out 5 years ago. First, we have the Abominable Kill Shot. This game was a game about going out and killing terrorists, like sniping them. But not only was it kind of awkward because you're going after real people in this game. They had real people on the cards. But also the game itself was just a horrible game where you're putting out cards, but only the person who put out a 10 on a pile would get the shot. And so you would sit there and like, why should I play cards? I don't want to play a 9 when you can play a 10. This was just an awful piece of dreck. It is... Skyscrapers. This is a dexterity game where they tried to have some Eurogame mechanisms, and you know what? They did not combine well. On one hand, it's like, hey, I'm building this thing, and it could fall over, and it's dexterity. And on the other hand, okay, there's this rule about moving people, and you're going to try to get them to spots. It just did not come together very well. Strikers is a soccer or football game that me and Melody played, and she liked it more than I did. And for me, it's come down over the years because I'm just getting tired of these soccer games. I need one that really feels like soccer. There's a lot of them out there, so that because other better ones, and I still haven't played an amazing one yet, other better ones than Strikers have come along. So I know this was a party game that I kind of said, yeah, it's not so bad. Yeah, well, not so bad for me these days is a 5. Again, your pictures and clues and trivia and all that stuff is just, there's a lot of them, so you need to stand out, and I know did not, other than the name. Omen, Shattered Aegis, brought more stuff, more characters to Omen. Omen is It's a unique two-player game where you're playing cards and trying to control different areas, a back and forth thing from small box games. I haven't seen much from them lately, so it was a nice expansion. Coercio is a abstract strategy game in which the board is shrinking as time goes by, and so you are trying to force your opponent to do different spots. A solid abstract strategy game, although I don't know that it's, I haven't played it for 5 years, so there's that. Stroudsburg, this is one of my introductions. I remember playing this and thinking, oh, this is cool, but there's all these different ways to get points, and this theme doesn't make any sense. Hey, I was introduced to Stefan Feld. I'd played some of his games earlier, but this was one of those games that I kind of liked. It's good, but really just felt like a bunch of mechanisms thrown into a box, which is probably why I haven't played it much since. Slovakia Wars, this is about owning a restaurant and attracting customers to the restaurant. Love the artwork. The theme of drafting people, getting them to your restaurant is cool. It's, again, a great theme of trying to get people to your restaurant. I think that I like that idea. So that's Slovakia Wars. Speaking of great themes, drum roll. Drum roll. Why don't they make more games about circuses? Now, this is a game about circus and trying to get people and trying to build up the proper circus. The theme is stronger than the game. The game is good. This was one of the beginning of Artipia Games, who now has been just making amazing, fantastic games. But I've always thought Drumroll was a good game. It's a solid game about just trying to get the right acts into your circus. Rumble in the House. This one has dropped slightly for me just because I've played it so many times. And there's Rumble in the Dungeon, there's Cthulhu in the House, which are, the same things. Essentially, you have different characters, and they move, and some of those characters you're secretly, and you're moving characters in, and then you pick one of the characters to get knocked out. And so you're trying not to make people know which one is yours. Ares Project. This one designed by my friend Jeff Engelstein. I really do enjoy this game, where he brought it, basically a real-time strategy game to life, where one person was essentially humans, and one person was aliens, and one person was a giant robot. Still love that part about being a giant robot. The game is just too complex, really. The ideas are cool. Maybe a streamlined version is in the future. I still like it, but it's really hard to get anyone to play it. That's my drop in ratings. Discworld AnkhMorpork. I really expected to dislike this game from Martin Wallace, Mayfair Games, and in the Discworld universe. I like the Discworld universe. I'm not a huge fan of it like some people are. But I have to say, the idea of this game and having a secret victory condition and maneuvering things is a pretty good game. So I was surprised and enjoy it. Then we have The Legend of Drizzt. I remember this review strongly because I would pronounce his name Drizzt or Drizzt or Drizzt, because I don't know the pronunciation of fantasy names, and I don't care if I know them, but I sure took a lot of heat for not knowing that. But this game itself, which you can still see on my shelves here, it's right here. It mixes with Wrath of Ashardlan and Temple of Elemental Evil. These all come together, and you're playing a cooperative game against different monsters. Really is just fun. And then Timeline. Timeline. It's hard to believe Timeline is 5 years old, but taking cards and putting them on a table and saying this came before that and this came before that. There's a lot of timelines. Timelines Inventions, I think, was the one I reviewed, but there are many more, and they've brought them all together recently in a big timeline game, but the whole concept is both educational and really fun. And then we'll go back 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I reviewed Sudoku Challenge. Yeah, I gave it a terrible rating because it was just trying to replicate Sudoku in a board game. And I don't want Sudoku in a board game. I want Sudoku on paper. Why would I want a board game that does pretty much the same thing? Abridged. I still remember when I ran into the out-of-the-box publishing, which is, unfortunately, they're out of business at this point, and they had just gotten rid of Apples to Apples. They'd sold it to Mattel. Wow, that's 10 years ago. And they said, but Abridged is our next big thing. Well, it wasn't. I never played Bridge. I remember at that convention, a lady tried to teach me Bridge, and I played a Bridge, and there was a dummy player, and I hated the dummy player. It just wasn't a very good game. Hero Card was a set of games in which each game was a different game, but you could take the decks and mix them into the other games. There was Hero Card Galaxy, a space exploration game, which, as it turned out, it was a fine game, but it was a generic space one. There was Hero Card Champion of New Olympus, which was a superhero game. And at the time, I was like, yes, a superhero game, but it wasn't really an amazing superhero game because no one talks about it now. And Hero Card Samurai, which is probably the best of the lot because it was like an area control style board. And so you could take a superhero deck and put it in the samurai one, and you could take a space one and put it in the superhero one and mix them back and forth. And it was a cool idea and it worked, but it didn't work amazingly well. Heroes Incorporated, Heroes Incorporated, another superhero game. And these are like the only 2 superhero games that came out in those like 3 or 4 years or whatever. Heroes Incorporated was a game in which you were trying to go around and fight crime to become the newest superhero team of the city so that you could make some money. Super was an expansion for that added more stuff. So it was good. Heroes Incorporated is a fine game, but it's lost a lot of luster over the years. I would never play it now compared to the great superhero games that we have. And Disorder. This is like a puzzly game where you're slowly building a word. This is a game that actually existed like on paper that people would play as they build the word out. Very puzzly, very thinky. I enjoyed playing it with my wife, but it's kind of fallen by the wayside, as many of these kind of puzzly word games have. Whew! That's a lot of games that came out 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Those are my thoughts on them. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been Look Back on the Dice Tower.